all the night dreamers talking to you at night. Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
From the great Northwest, deep in the forest shadows, this is Night Dreams, Forbidden Realms. And now, here's Gary.
And here I am. And tonight we're going to be talking about monsters. No, not my ex-father-in-law or mother-in-law, but real monsters out in the woods. And are they Bigfoot, dogmen, or a combination, or they're possibly more? And have you ever gone camping and had some weird experiences like tree knocking or other strange noises when you were going camping? Have you ever, JC?
I have come across some weird things in my camping days. Yes, I have. Let me tell you. And matter of fact, about 3-4 years ago at Gretchen's Fest was some weird stuff happened for sure. Yeah,
what did you hear?
Well, we was out there investigating ghosts at the old mill. It's about 300 years old, dead quiet in the bottom of a mountain in the middle of nowhere. And it sounds like somebody hit the sidewall of a racetrack going about 100 miles an hour. There's one road going in, one road coming out at 12:30. This noise was so loud that we yelled some profanities because it spooked us out of our shoes. Like, where'd it come from? It was like everywhere and nowhere and so loud, we could never figure out what it was, where it was. No explanation for it. It was weird.
There's one place I would never go is that wooded area in Japan where people go to commit suicide. There's literally been thousands of people, have committed suicide there. Could you imagine if any place would have ghosts? That was one place. I would not go camping in that one.
Yeah, that place is off the hook. The other one place I always want to go to is the one in Romania, the Baktu something forest. It's got a spot in the middle of it, nothing grows, and they've had everything from werewolves to UFOs to you name it. A lot of weird stuff going on.
A lot of people talk about dogmen, but I still honestly wonder, could it not be dogmen, but werewolves?
Well, I thought that too, but there's a difference. Here's the difference. Dogmen have tails. Werewolves don't.
How do you know? Have you ever pulled down the pants of a werewolf?
I did the other day, and it said, "What are you doing,
Well,
sir?"
Yeah, but here's the difference, though. Werewolves, if you watch the old movies, they always were dressed. They weren't running around naked in the movie. So how do you know they didn't have a tail?
Well, they had to pass the ratings back then, but the newer ones are not dressed, though. But yeah, you're right. But anyway, that's the logic behind it, I guess.
Well, tonight we're going to be talking about missing 411 in the woods. We're going to be talking about Bigfoot and dogmen and other strange things that go on with Christopher George, who was a ranger for many years. So he would know all that stuff. And we're not being told the truth, what goes on in the woods. Let's find out a little bit about George.
Christopher George, who is the founder of Anubis Paranormal Research Organization, holds credentials in parapsychology and alternative history. Mr. George is a renowned parapsychologist who studied at one of Southern California's prestigious colleges in their Parapsychology Laboratory from 1979 through 1982 as a research associate. During his 3-decade career, Mr. George has investigated more than 2,500 cases of ghosts, hauntings, poltergeists, and conducted extensive studies in hauntings, cryptozoology, and the UFO phenomenon. Mr. George has also taught paranormal studies to students at Hodges University in South Florida, where he has shared many facets of the scientific approach to the paranormal. In his primary career, Christopher George has been in the role of park ranger. His experience in law enforcement, historical identification, and research has helped him to explore both the physical world and the paranormal world, working hand in hand.
Well, George, it's been really nice to get you back on. It's been a couple years since you've been on, my friend.
That's true, Gary. It's good to see you too.
And
I'm glad to be here.
Well, is it safe really to go camping out in the woods? I'm not talking about at a campground, where you got another couple hundred people camping, but, going out and backpacking deep in the woods.
You have to take precautions. Even if nothing happens, you still have to take precautions. There's a lot of bad people in the parks. And just recently with the shutdown and everything, the rangers were pulled. And you could see that there was a large influx of individuals going in, performing illegal activities and so on. And it really has damaged the parks. But when you're going in and you encounter something that you can't understand, it can be even more detrimenting, and it can also lead a person into shock because their minds can't wrap around what exactly it is they're seeing or encountering.
Well, there's a gentleman called Mr. Bell on YouTube, and every night he puts up a YouTube. It's not a visual, it's an audio, and he tells stories about Bigfoot or other creatures out in the woods. And, if you listen to it, I would never want to go back in the woods.
Even as a park ranger, there were moments that I definitely did not want to go back out into the woods, especially alone. And it was just because of what I encountered. Again, your sane mind is trying to tell you what you're looking at isn't what you're seeing. And it can really, really take you aback. And but the incidents are increasing now. Latest reports is that on an average of 3 out of 5 people who go into the parks are encountering something that they cannot explain.
How about ghosts? Did you ever have people say they saw a ghost?
Yes, especially in some of the old monument areas, like with any of the monuments in Washington, Philadelphia. Those areas are very strong. A lot of parks have buildings. For instance, the Ahwahnee Hotel in Yosemite is very haunted, and of course that's where they got the idea for the interiors for The Shining. Even though when Stephen King wrote his book, it was based on the Stanley Hotel here in Colorado, but the interiors were modeled after the Ahwahnee, and we get reports there. Also, incidents where people will see Native Americans and they think they're performers. Same thing with Gettysburg. Gettysburg will see what they think are reenactors. And when they go to get closer, they just disappear. So a lot of the national monuments, a lot of the national parks, forests, and so forth are very, very haunted.
That's really scary when you think about it. And do a lot of people really go missing in the woods?
On an average, 3 to 4 people per month.
Now,
that is on average of basically each park, each of the larger parks, not just in general, but across the board.
So in a month's time, it can be dozens of people across the country just vanish?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, some of them can be explained. Somebody's trying to run off and disappear. A lot of times, too, it could be somebody that's trying to evade legal issues and they want to go off the map. But the ones that are with families and people that they're there camping with, when 1 minute they're there and the next minute they're not, really are the ones that you have to look at very closely.
How about people in campgrounds? There's a story about, a kid had vanished that another person wrote the series of the missing 411 books. I mean, is there anything like that happens that you ever noticed?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. We used to get calls all the time. And parents would be with their kid or kids, and they would be working around their campsite, and they turn around and the child is gone. And they start looking, and they're yelling out for them and so on, and there's no response. And sometimes they're found, and a lot of times they're very kind of spaced out. They really don't know how long they've been gone or what had happened. They only had like figments of memory. And then there are the ones that never do come back.
That's scary. Does it go through a cycles, George, where, this stuff happens in during the year? Is it cycles? Does it go through cycles?
It can, but on the majority of it, it's usually right around the spring and fall areas. And they will, of course, like I said, come in, camp, and enjoy the slower months. But the problem is that they just don't really realize. They think that there's a park ranger behind every tree to make sure that the park is safe. And really, the parks are not safe. In the controlled environments, like, again, using Yosemite as an example, the valley is relatively safe. But as soon as you leave the valley, that's when the problems start. That's when the disappearance starts, the sightings, the encounters, and so forth.
Well, again, if you think about it, does it ever go through cycles like sunspot activity or anything like that? Does that affect with, weird things happening in the forest?
Well, it does. And you do notice those. And we do keep, or when I was still working regularly, we always kept data on the environmental issues, the seismic activity, the solar activity, and so on. But time and space does seem to have an effect. Like we were just talking before we went on air with Three-Eye Atlas. And once Three-Eye Atlas showed up, activity in the park started to increase. Not only UFO activity, but encounters with alleged aliens. Some of the other cryptids came into effect, and even an increase in haunted signs, plus portals. So all of this has just increased tenfold since the arrival of this object, whether it's a asteroid or whether it's something more. It gets crazier and crazier every time you hear the news about it.
Well, if you really go into the physics side of it, we're not maybe even real. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this could be glitches in some type of program that's running. We don't know.
That's true.
And we're so close, and I say it all the time on the show, breaking the next dimension where portals and ghosts, what we think are ghosts, maybe are not ghosts. Maybe it's creatures from another dimension.
Right.
So, It's a lot of things we don't even know about our own planet.
Well, the strange thing is, too, that they, of course, talk about alternative worlds, different dimensions and so forth. And that kind of comes into the aspect of the Mandela effect. And the Mandela effect really points out differences that a large majority of people remember, but basically everybody says never happened. And that's a big dilemma, because I myself remember things, just like the Fruit of the Loom's underwear with the cornucopia. I remember that just as clear as daylight, but they said it never happened. So who's to say that we may not be shifting in realities?
A very good possibility, because if you really think about it, we could be going in and out the same way. Like somebody could be driving on a back road. They come up to an old town where there's still people, and they stop in a cafe and they actually talk to the people. Then they go the next week and check to see, if it's still there, because they want to actually check it out, and it's not there. And people said, hey, that town was gone 100 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And that happens more than most people realize. And a lot of people don't want to go and talk about it because they think somebody's going to say they're crazy, or they were dreaming it, or some other thing. But to the individual, it's as real can be. And it does happen. Just recently, there was another encounter of a time loop where somebody was driving along and stopped to get something to eat in this diner, got a hamburger for 5 cents and a cup of coffee for a couple cents, and was amazed and just like, what is this a special today? What is this? And they finally leave, and they're just bewildered, and they do. Just like you said, they'll go back because, hey, that was a great deal. And it's been gone a long, long time.
Yeah, I had an encounter like that years ago. I don't even want to get into it. But, I think everybody in their lifetime has had that happen, a time slip or something. And they just don't want to talk about it because, again, if you go tell the wrong person, they'll start thinking you got a problem. And, and this is like years ago when, people, they saw a UFO. So they start telling their friends, I saw a UFO the other night, it was following me. I got out of my car and there it was. And then it took off. People would back away from that person because they thought, this guy belongs in a mental ward. And, now you can talk about it and, 99% of the people are interested in what you have to say. It's too bad we don't have that on the cryptic side as what is going on the UAP side right now.
I agree because I think they're all related to some form or manner, whether it be dimensional or interdimensional activity, whether UFOs and aliens are interdimensional. Those are the things that we've all got to research further instead of just writing everything off. In parapsychology, it is one of the most researched sciences there is, but there's no proof to back it up. You got photographs which can be altered, you've got reports that could be made up, and the list goes on. But something is happening, and something is occurring that our minds cannot comprehend. And, it's just like with me. I believe I told you this story, one of the episodes I was on last, about when I was down in the Everglades, and I was out on the boardwalk, and I went through a grove of trees, and I came out, and everything had kind of changed. The water looked different. The sun looked different. There were plants that I couldn't recognize, but the boardwalk was still there. And I got on the radio, and I tried to contact the ranger station, and couldn't get through. It was just static. And so I kind of thought, this is very odd, because again, the sun was even in a different position than from what it was when I looked at it last. And so it kind of freaked me out. And so I went back through the grove of trees. But each time I went through it, I got a very staticky electrical shock. And then as soon as I came back out, I got the radio started working. Everything was working properly. And when I got back, I told my story, but just in that case, you didn't drink enough water. The heat got to you. You suffering from sunstroke, something, that they could tangibly say was the scientific aspect of what I had witnessed. But where I was, I had no idea.
Well, maybe you went for a portal to a parallel universe where that lake existed, but the time and space was different, altered. Right. So, yeah, it's very good possibility.
Well, and that's what I believe happened. In my career, I've seen 3 portals. And that is the only one that I can officially say that I went through. But I'm sure there's a lot more. And a lot of people may walk right through one without even realizing that they have. And in my case, if I had noticed the differences, the subtle differences, I probably would have kept walking down that boardwalk to goodness knows where, and probably may never have been able to come back.
Well, that's the scary thing. Let's say you do go into a time slip or a portal and you're back in time or forward in time, and maybe on another planet that is a parallel to ours. And if you, for some reason, don't go back in time, you would be trapped there, wouldn't you?
Yeah. You would definitely be in a bit of a sticky situation. And who knows how many people may have done that. Maybe many of the 411 have just done exactly that, and they were unable to get back to this existence.
Well, Chris, I heard in the national parks, a lot of people claim, and I even heard it from some park rangers, that they saw portals open and close.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen anything like that out in the woods?
Yeah. Oh, yes, twice. The one that I remember most vividly is I and one of my partners were back in the back area of Yosemite Valley. And there is a trail there. There's an existing trail. And we were coming back, and the sun had just set over the mountains. And so we were walking back, and all of a sudden I heard a slight hum. And it got louder and louder. And as it got louder, we saw a very, very tiny, tiny little speck of light. And that speck of light started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it was a very large size. And here it is night on our end, but on the other side, it was daytime. There were white clouds, there were trees, there was green grass. And my partner says, I got to go see what this is. And I says, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to go over there and check that out. And I says, no, you're not. I says, you don't know how long that thing is going to be open. And you could very well get stuck on that side. So he hemmed and hawed about it. And then finally he decided, well, maybe I better not. And as soon as he said that, the thing just went.
What did it look like,
gone.
Chris?
It looked like it had golden edges, kind of like a cloudish look to it with a little bit of sparkling. And then on the other side, it was just like a doorway. You were going from night to day. And it was more fascinating than frightening. But at the same time, you think, goodness gracious, if I had just taken one step in there and that thing decided to close, then what could it have happened? And it very well, these things could be wormholes, just like you're saying. Instead of to a different dimension, it could take you to literally a different time or a different planet in general. And I kind of think that's how I'm a strong believer in extraterrestrials, and just from my own personal encounters, but I believe that's how they're traversing the distances.
That kind of reminds me of the old TV series, Stargate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, well, where did they get that idea from?
Probably that. I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. A lot of people go missing, again, out in the woods, and they're walking down a path.
Mm-hmm. And
all of a sudden they walk through a portal without realizing it.
Yeah.
And then they're not heard of ever again.
Exactly. And can you imagine the trauma that must be? Because like when I did it, and I'm not saying I did, but it sure seemed like it to me. It unnerved me quite a bit when I got back. And it was like, I know what I saw. I know what I felt. I know that this place was wrong. This was not here, Earth, whatever. And it does stay with you for the longest periods of time. And it can it can change your outlook on a lot of things, religiously, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. I mean, the list goes on. But you have to be able to open your mind to that possibility and say, I guess I'm lucky because I touched the other side of the unknown.
Yeah, but to have
And
to hold that within you for all these years. And then
yeah.
also, I mean, did you share it to any other of the park rangers? What happened?
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and how did they treat you afterwards?
Well, they kind of looked like I needed a cold room for a while and lots of water. But some of them said, I think I've had the same thing happen to me. They wouldn't really elaborate because they were kind of afraid of being reported as mental or something, and it could jeopardize their jobs. I told them, I said, hey, listen, I went through this and I know what the heck I saw. And, it kind of died down about a week later or so, but I'd never forgotten it.
Well, about 20 some years ago, I used to know the regional director for like Mount Rainier for the parks.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Yeah.
I knew his son, but then I got to know his father. And, he told me some stuff off to the side, that on Bigfoot and these creatures and stuff like that, when they have actually found, I don't want to go into it on the show, but they found victims that that looked like maybe a bear, but in this case, he said it wasn't a bear, attacked him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that has happened a lot in the parks and in forests. The difference between a bear is the way it encounters the human. Let's put it that way. But when you encounter something different, it's the wounds, shall we say, are much more along the lines of razors.
Yeah.
And it's too precise. So a bear, will do things with somebody, but these other encounters, they're totally off the charts.
And he said it was really hard to keep it from getting out, he said that they pretty much, I'm not going to use that word either. When they take the reports and stuff, they get lost.
Yes.
They disappear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would fill out a report. I was even in a senior position, and I would file the report. I would take it into my supervisor. He would read over it, and he would put it in a blue file. And this blue file would go into a locked cabinet. And so a day would pass, and all of a sudden, somebody would come to the station. They were usually dressed in suits, and they would come in and they would take the report, and they would ask me, as the reporting ranger, were the facts in it the truth and nothing but the truth? And I'd say yes. And then they would look at you and they would tell you, this never happened. Do you understand?
Were people threatened with their jobs if they opened their mouth, or worse?
Yeah. So they kept us in line. And a lot of it's coming out more now. You'll hear reports from other rangers, but when I was doing all of this, it was on the top secret aspect. They do not want to have people stop coming to the parks because that is a large revenue source. And they don't want to lose that. And they don't want a bad reputation of the park being dangerous.
Well, what's scary is with all the cuts, and now there's less rangers and everything, that's really scary for protection wise. We need to take a break, Chris. We'll be back in about 3 minutes, and we're going to talk more about Bigfoot and Dogman and maybe some predator type things. So we'll be right back.
Good.
So stay tuned.
Available now. Bigfoot Origins, The Search for the Cryptid Homeland by Mike Dupler. This is the most comprehensive and in-depth examination of Bigfoot ever written. How did Bigfoot in North America, the Yowie in Australia, and the Woodwoes, Britain's Bigfoot, get to where they are today? Mike Dupler connects the dots, and the conclusions are incredible. This changes everything. Don't be left out in the woods, in the cold, not knowing. Read Bigfoot Origins, The Search for the Cryptid Homeland by Mike Dupler. Available now on Amazon. From the shadows of the unknown, from the front lines of truth-seeking, this is the show that cuts through the garbage and tells it like it is. No hype, no spin, just raw, unfiltered truth. This is Night Dreams Talk Radio with your host, Gary Anderson. And yeah, Gary is back, and he's taking no prisoners.
I'm not taking any prisoners because I have no place to put them. You know that, JC. Here's the thing. How many people out there have had an encounter with a cryptid and has kept totally quiet? Well, we're back with you, Chris, and you know, that's the thing. There's a lot of people there have seen it or seen something they can't explain, and they're holding that inside to them. And you know what that does? I think, how can a person live holding that back because they're scared to tell anybody?
Well, I think that there are probably a lot more than we even imagine. And if we were to know the exact numbers, I'm sure we would be absolutely shocked. But there again, people want to maintain a little bit of self-discipline, and many people will try and talk themselves out of what they've seen by trying to rationalize it. And that's happened a lot of times in reporting. The first line if I could have gotten 5 cents for every time I heard, "You're not going to believe this when I tell you," I'd be a millionaire plus. But that's just because they expect you not to believe it. And they'll keep these stories to themselves. And or they'll say, "I wasn't really going to come forward with this, but I think you should know this." And it really is sad because people's credibility and their mental state are always in question when you're talking about the unknown.
Yeah. Now, shifting just for a minute away from the unknown and missing people and Bigfoot and Dogman and Goatman, because that's now, people are talking about that. Yellowstone. What is going on in Yellowstone? Because I keep hearing that it's heating up more and more. Yeah. Are we getting close to an explosion with Yellowstone maybe down the road?
Well, that's the scary end of it. There's been a large increase in sulfur dioxide poisoning. A lot of the trees are dying because the ponds and everything else are eluding this sulfur dioxide. The temperatures are rising in the calderas. There's been unexpected explosions of certain calderas that were not supposed to do that at all. Now, the government is going to say, "Oh, it's going to be a couple million years," or this, that, and the other. I don't think so. The Earth is going through so many changes right now. You look at all the earthquakes that are taking place. all of the volcanoes in general around the Ring of Fire, typhoons and cyclones. The world is up to something. And we are just tiny little specks on the back of Mother Earth. And when she wants to do something, she's going to do it. Well, even in Africa, the continent is splitting. And that's another aspect of this, that the plate tectonics are all getting funky and weird. And so science, they say they know what's going on, but they don't have a clue.
No, in fact, this last week I was reading a science journal online, and it was a reputable university. They're talking about there's a place in the ocean that is opening up, and the water is draining into the earth. And that is kind of alarming. They were shocked to see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that too, there's a lot of people that believe that there's inner areas of the earth that are cavernous, that have inland oceans or under, oceans and land masses very similar to what's up on top. It's warmer, but if it has a controlled environmental system, who knows? And of course, that's where the legends of the lizard people come from. Both from the Native Americans as well as sightings and general encounters. They all say that they're pretty much from a time long before man, but they established themselves in the inner earth. So who's to say that they're wrong?
Well, could those lizard people actually be ETs that originally came to this planet?
Well, and that's the big question. As a scientist, one has to determine, could they be extraterrestrial? Yes. Could they be an evolution off of the dinosaurs that survived and gradually evolved into a hominid and became intelligent and stayed underground because of the dangers that existed up on the upper part of the crust? So there's a lot of possibilities. But to say that, no, they don't exist. And it's also along the lines of Antarctica. Why is Antarctica the most controlled area on the face of the earth? It's only open to the militaries, and anybody going down there has to go through a flood of paperwork and background checks. And if they're not science related or anything along those lines, they're not allowed anywhere near that place. And there have been many groups that have said that they had encountered UFOs that go into caves down there. Even during World War II, when Germany was strong, they sent crews to Antarctica to search for hidden bases because they believed in the Illyrians, which they believed also were star people. And they felt that that might be where the Illyrians were from, or were stationed at, shall we say. But with as many sightings above air, we are starting now more to see sightings underwater.
Yeah.
Encounters that submarines are picking up these quote unquote targets that are going astronomically fast underwater that they can't even keep up with. They see UFOs coming up out of the water. And one of the deepest areas in the Pacific is right off of the coast of Los Angeles, right between the islands, the chain islands, and the mainland. And so people see lights under there all the time.
Well, if you really think about it, there's two places on this earth. If I was a alien race and I wanted to have a base on this earth to watch what's going on this planet, it'd be one, Antarctica, two, the deepest parts of the ocean. Because we haven't even mapped very much of the ocean, what's down there.
Right.
And
it's a small fraction.
And you think about this, the forest out there, the woods. We have actually, there's places where humans have never even ventured.
Exactly.
And we're talking huge areas.
Yes. All the way through North America, all the way up through Canada. Alaska is a prime example. All of those general areas, even in Russia, you've got Siberia and many, many of the other places that the population count is just nil. And so absolutely, there's potential for all sorts of different places and different types of entities to exist. And, we haven't even said anything about the moon. I believe there are bases up there. I think that's basically bird blind, to be actually truthful. I think there are things on the dark side of the moon that are basically their bases, and they're monitoring us from there.
Well,
the
it
oceans, the air.
It depends on who you talk to. Now, we've had some major people on the show. In fact, our last show, we talked about the moon and, and again, about maybe being alien bases or our bases on there. Oh, no. There's no proof of it. But again, if you look at this, even in Antarctica, I have a friend who's been on the show, Mary Joyce, gave me the location for Google Maps to look this one spot in Antarctica of this huge opening, which a 747 could fly into. That's how big it was. And I was stupid. I didn't screenshot anything. I figured I'd go back a couple hours later and check it out and screenshot it and do all that. When even I think my producer even checked that one out. Well, anyway, when I went back, it was non-existent. It was blacked out.
Yeah.
So that if you look at the moon, look at what the astronauts said when they stepped on the moon. Look at these craft. They're bigger than anything we have. But yet, the other thing is, okay, come on. Why haven't we gone back to the moon? We're talking about going back to the moon, but it always something comes up and we don't do it.
Exactly. And I think that's the scary part is in the 60s, we had a quarter, even that, of technology that we have today. And we have never gone back, which raises the eyebrow as to why not. Is somebody or something telling us not to? There's stories that when we landed on the moon, the astronauts said that they saw a craft sitting on the rim of the
crater.
The crater there. And they said they're watching us. And so who's to say? There again, they probably curious as to why we were there. And, but these are the things, just like you're saying, you go back to try to find something on Google or image search or anything, and it disappears. So what does that tell you? Just like right now, I'm sure there's a few ears listening in and around Washington or heaven knows where that are listening to this conversation.
Yeah, they might even be in Nebraska too. JC,
exactly.
You remember back a couple years ago, Mary Joyce gave us a location of this castle-like foundation in Antarctica, and you saw it, and I went and looked at it, and when I went back again, I'm stupid. Sometimes I got so much on my plate. I'll go back later and screenshot it. When I went back, it was not there. Did you have that same encounter?
Yes, I remember that very well. And yeah, the same thing happened. Not only that, it was almost 6 months after that. Me and you found some pillars that looked like castle pillars that were going
that's what
down.
we're talking about.
No, there was another set too we'd found after that. It was different, in a different area. It was similar, but not the same. But yeah, same scenario. They disappeared. Time we think, oh, I need to go screenshot that, and it's gone.
Yeah, it's blacked out. You can't see anything. Again, NASA just announced about a week or so ago, from one of their images, they found a bone on Mars. Figured that one out.
Yes, that's a tough figure.
Well, they also showed just recently, too, a picture that was allegedly released through NASA of what looked like a very odd, strange bear on the surface. It had a very strange head, but it had kind of the bulk of a bear, and it was on 4 legs. Now, of course, people are saying, trick photography, this, that, and the other. But who says... Now, we know that there is a slight atmosphere on the planet. It's not developed enough for us. But at one time, there was life very similar to Earth on Mars before the atmosphere was ripped apart. And you look at that, and they also discovered they had the isotope for radiation that would be caused by a nuclear attack. I can't remember the isotope's name right offhand, but those things are there. Something happened to Mars that affected the entire planet in general. And again, what if they went underground? What if they're living underground and there are certain species that are still alive, but just very, very few of them on the surface? So, I mean, it's all science fiction. It's all hypothesis and so on. But who's to say differently? That's the thing.
Well,
I mean, Richard Hoagland was good at that.
Oh, yeah. But you have to realize we're very immature when it comes to science yet. We're learning every day. Just again, I was reading in a science journal that they found a part of a bone from a dinosaur that actually had tissue that wasn't hardened, wasn't, petrified. And they're now trying to clone that tissue they found. Could you imagine if they could bring back a dinosaur?
Well, I know they're working on trying to revive the mammoth. In fact, they created two, they called them mammoth mice. They put the genetic material into these mice, and they started to grow this real thick hair, just like a mammoth. And then I know they also have tried to clone dire wolves with existing wolves because they found the genetic material for that. So who's to say that Jurassic Park isn't that far down the road?
That's scary, though.
It is. It is. Because we're playing with things that we really shouldn't be playing with, that we have no idea of how they existed. We know what time they existed and how they died, but we don't know the fundamental lifestyles of these creatures. We assume we know, but we really don't, since we were not there.
Yeah, you're right.
And of course, now they're discovering, too, that the other thing is they're finding that man has been around a lot longer than they first thought.
A lot longer. A lot.
Yeah. So it's an interesting prospect.
Chris, I'm wondering if there was two divisions. I know there actually was two divisions of man, but maybe there was another division of man that was more advanced than us. I really believe that this planet has been rebooted once or twice. I think they moved up in technology up to a certain level, and then something happened, and then we started back in the Stone Age again and started refreshed.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you hear the stories of Atlantis and the continent of Niue, can't remember. It was supposed to be in the Pacific, but these were like some of the founding civilizations, and they were destroyed. They were wiped out. So where did the survivors go? They had to go and restart again. And that's why we've got pyramids around the world, because the survivors went in the 7 different directions. And the pyramid structure was instrumental to the civilization that they had. And every ancient civilization has had pyramids.
Yeah, that's worldwide. No internet, no writing, no plans to build them, but they're all over the world. That tells us that we've been helped by technology that has been far superior, which I really think they were alien. And, a lot of people, when I get people mad, and I'm going to say it, but, people have always had, Chris, to believe in something. Going back at the beginning of time, the fire god from the volcano, that was a god. The sun god, the fire god, when they invented how to create fire, that was a god to them. And who knows what God really is? God could actually have been an alien race. that
Yeah,
came here
exactly.
and did what they did, clone humans, did whatever they did, gave us a certain amount of values and helped us along the way.
Well, when you look at the historical record of man in general, there have been, about 5 to 6 different variations of hominid. So we'll use that term. But when Homo sapien arrived, he was just there. There was no evolutionary track. You could see where Neanderthal spread off. You could see where Cro-Magnon split off. You could follow it all the way back, but Homo sapien just was there in the records. They've never found anything linking us, thus the term the missing link, to establish us with that other type of race. And yet, ironically, you look at Neanderthal, they were the most robust and strongest of all of the species, and yet they were wiped out. And yet we were very frail. We are prone to disease. We are not. Our lifespan is not that long. So what caused us to take the center seat, unless it was we were being helped at a very, very early point in the existence of mankind to develop the things and the tools that we needed.
I think so, and I really think we're still being helped in one way or the other. Now, going back to I have a tendency when I interview Chris, it's like if we were sitting and talking,
Sure.
and just having a conversation. And I find it's more exciting that way. And evidently some of the listeners do too. But going back into the forest, have you ever encountered a Bigfoot yourself or seen proof of a Bigfoot?
The first Bigfoot I ever encountered, I was about 6 or 7 years old. I was on a camping trip with my family and outside of a town called Leadville, Colorado. I spent my youth there. And on this particular summer, we decided to go camping at a place called Half Moon Campground. And it sits pretty much at the foot of Mount Elbert, which is the second highest mountain in the United States. And we were out there, and I got upset about some reason. Somebody in my family made me mad. And so I decided to go trot off down the pathway and go sit by the river that was going through there. And I was throwing stones, and all of a sudden I heard some rustling in the trees right across from on the stream there. And I looked up, and it was kind of one of those where you look up and you look up and you look up and you look up. And here was this huge, what I thought was a bear, but it was standing on 2 legs. It had the face pretty much of a human. Eyes were very humanistic. And it kind of stood there and it kind of cocked its head at me. I didn't feel threatened. And it just was looking at me, and it made a couple noises at me. And I just kind of lifted my hand and waved, and it raised its arm and its paw like this. And it looked at me again and then just turned around and just walked right off. So I wasn't sure what the heck I had seen. Well, later on, my sister-in-law told me, "Oh, you saw the Half Moon monster." So apparently many people had encountered this creature at this campground, and they had called it the Half Moon monster. Now, as a park ranger, I saw Bigfoot 3 times. And it always fascinated me more than scared me. I was always armed, usually when I was in the backcountry, either by myself or with another ranger. We always carried a rifle with us. And of course, we also had our Glocks on us.
The Glock, I don't think, George, the Glock would do very, Chris, I don't think the Glock would do much. I got excited there because, I had that encounter with a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember me ever telling you that.
Yeah, I do remember you. I do remember you telling me.
Yeah. The only 2 times I peed myself after 6 years old was when I was in first grade or kindergarten. The other time was when I encountered a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it scares the living out of me. Here's the thing. I don't think a Glock would stop. I don't even think a rifle would, unless you got a couple good kill shots, would stop it.
Well, to be honest with you, I wouldn't want to tick it off. That's for sure. As long as it stayed a distance away, false comfort, I think, more than anything, is what those things, you had. Yeah, they work on other terrestrial animals, but I think you're right. I mean, these things are built like bricks, they're just strong and massive. And I first heard it the first time I encountered it. And all I heard was the banging on the trees. This ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I'd stop and I'd listen. Thunk, thunk. And then across the way, you'd hear another ka-thunk, ka-thunk. So they were letting each other know where they were at, is what I feel they were doing. And so I rode up, and I was in a kind of a open area, meadow area, and there was a whole back area of trees. And I was just the horse was acting scared, very skittish. Now, this time I was by myself. I didn't have anybody to get me out of there if things went south real quick. And so I kept trying to figure out where it was coming, because when you've got trees and you're in a meadow, everything has a tendency of echoing. So I wasn't sure if what I was hearing the first time was echoing off in the distance and coming back, or if there was more than something else. But other terrestrial animals, with the exception of the ape family, make knocking sounds. And so I was trying to figure, well, okay, is somebody just playing games out there and making noises or what? Because you're trying to think realistically. And then I kind of went in the direction, and the horse just was not going to do it. And that was my first indicator that something was terribly wrong. They only react if there's a predator in the area and something's spooking them. So I kind of went on by myself. I tied up the horse and I kind of walked a little bit farther. And right at the tree line, I saw basically this big, hairy arm come around the tree, and then it pulled itself out to look at me from behind the tree. And I stopped dead in my tracks. And it looked at me, I looked at it, it kept looking at me, and I started going, holy moly, and a few other special words, and started to back up towards where the horse was, because I thought, well,
Chris, how big was it?
Oh, goodness gracious. It was anywhere between 8 and 10 feet, just based on my knowledge of how tall the trees are in that area. And so I was able to calculate just by looking at where it was compared to the base and as well as to the top of the tree. And it literally told me, yeah, that I'm X amount of feet away from this thing. And at that distance, it was still tall.
That's scary.
So it was scary. And I got the feeling that I was not wanted there. So I went ahead and I lifted my hands up like this, and I went, okay, big guy, it's all yours. I got back to the horse and I went in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And
that's all you can do. I don't know. Some of these people claim that they get orbs from them, and they get, all these messages that they would never hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with that. I think, they're not human. They weren't, they weren't brought up like we were. So their ideas to them, we're a threat to their territory. We're in their territory. Now, hey, Chris,
Right.
we need to take a break. We'll be back in about 3.5 minutes. We'll maybe take a couple phone
All right.
calls, and we'll have more conversation about dogmen and Bigfoot. So everybody stay tuned. You're listening to Night Dreams. Make sure you give us a thumbs up. Give us a comment on the show. If you're listening later on Apple or TuneIn, Spotify, please leave a comment about the show. We'll be right back.
From coast to coast to worldwide, you're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network News, where the strange, the unexplained, and the truth the mainstream won't touch gets uncovered. I'm Guy Ticker, and here's what's shaking this week in the shadows. Cryptid Watch. Northern Michigan is buzzing once again with multiple reports of a tall, upright, wolf-like creature with glowing red eyes. Locals call it the Dog Man, and it's no myth to them. Campers have been scared off. Tree bark has been shredded up to 6 feet high, and nighttime howls are giving seasoned hunters chills. Paranormal investigators are boots on the ground. Local sheriffs, quiet as ghosts. In Louisiana's Bayou country, a hunter caught what he swears is thermal footage of the Rougarou, a swamp beast of Cajun legend. Biologists say bear, witnesses say wrong. The debate rages on. On the UFO front lines, 2 commercial pilots flying separate airlines over the Atlantic report being followed by glowing sphere-shaped craft that moved in ways no earthly aircraft can. 90-degree turns, no sonic boom, and they were pacing the jets for over 20 minutes. The FAA says they're looking into it. Translation, they're covering something up. But the real firebomb? A new whistleblower from the European Space Agency says multiple nations are in a covert arms race to reverse engineer off-world technology. The kicker? We're allegedly within 2 years of a soft disclosure event, and alien tech may already be influencing energy and propulsion breakthroughs on Earth. And this just in from Peru, rural villagers are reporting renewed attacks from the infamous face peelers, described as floating, glowing entities with advanced gear and strange behavior. Official explanation? Illegal miners with jetpacks. Really? In the jungle? That's not sci-fi, that's sci-leffable. In other news, politics meets the paranormal. Whispers out of Capitol Hill suggest a closed-door Senate intelligence review of private contractors allegedly in possession of non-human biologics and tech. Several lawmakers are demanding classified briefings only, citing national security. But behind closed doors, they're terrified the lid's about to blow. And in the election race, 2 future presidential candidates, one from each major party, have hinted that if elected, UFO disclosure will no longer be optional. Is this a campaign stunt or the beginning of the biggest reveal in human history? And that is the pulse of the planet. From cryptid encounters to things flying without wings and politics dancing with disclosure, we've got it covered. This is Night Dreams Talk Radio Network News, coast to coast and worldwide. Stay curious, stay bold, and keep looking up. From the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom, I'm Guy Ticker. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program. The unknown is calling. Welcome to Night Dreams Forbidden Realms. Our call-in line is now open. The number is 1-253-260-5713. That's 1-253-260-5713.
And we're back with Chris. I got to ask you another question. What is a skinwalker?
Sure. A skinwalker is believed to be a Native American witch doctor, somebody that has practiced dark magic. And as a result, they deal with a lot of evil entities and so forth. And by doing this, by becoming a part of this darker element, they're able to transform into different types of animals, mostly wolves or coyotes. And so that is the Native American aspect of it. Basically says you do not want to deal with them at all, because they will hex you. They will even, 86 you, those kind of things. And it's what they don't even talk about it. You go to anywhere in Native American lands, the reservations and so forth, they refuse to speak of it, because they believe that by talking to it, you're going to manifest it. So there is a lot of different groups that have encountered them. There is a lot of groups that totally believe in them, and they're seen quite often. They'll see somebody, a human, for instance, run at a very quick pace, and then all of a sudden they're running on all fours, and they look like a wolf, a coyote, any kind of an animal.
Like Bigfoot?
Possibly so. I mean, most of your native cultures revere Bigfoot. Sasquatch up in the northwest, in the Cascades and areas along the ocean there, the native population say that they have been around. They're the guardians of the woods.
Probably are. Hey, we got a caller. Who do we have?
This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. How are you doing this Friday night?
I'm listening to your show and enjoying what your guest has to say. It's a great show.
Okay, let me jump in there. Please don't call in while I already have a caller in. Wait till the caller is off. I only have one line at this moment. Okay, what's your question for Chris?
Well, number one, Chris, I have an associate of mine. I'm retired law enforcement, and you're absolutely correct about the fact that the only Native American that has ever openly talked to me about shapeshifters is a gentleman who is a retired Navajo Nation peace officer. Mm-hmm. And he and his partner were touring, and they talked a great deal about that. But they said, Tom, don't ever, ask tribal members unless you've been a friend of theirs for a very long time this, because they won't talk to you about it. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is just a conjecture question. Do you feel in your run-ins with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, that like human beings, there are different types of those creatures with different temperaments?
I believe so, because based upon the different encounters, not only in the U.S., but you're also looking at around the world, there are all sorts of legends about man-apes or, the walking hairy man. You take an aspect of, say, for instance, the Yeti. The Yeti is completely different than from what we perceive as Bigfoot here in the United States. The Yeti is much more aggressive. It's also much more isolated and unto itself, but the Tibetans all know about it and regard it as sacred. You look at Florida, for instance, the Bigfoot down there is called the skunk ape. And the skunk ape lives primarily in the Ozark areas, the Everglades, and so on. And they're primarily known for the foul stench that they emit. But for instance, when I was talking about when I was a child and seeing a Bigfoot, I felt no fear whatsoever. I felt like it was more curious about me than anything else and was just sizing me up. And then the one that I encountered, or the couple that I encountered in Yosemite, I would not say that. I definitely felt like I was intruding and that I needed to back off.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Oh, boy, the lines are going crazy here. We got another caller. Boy, it's like 5 or 6 we're going. I only have one line right now. Who do we have? Well, they're not there. Okay. Well, anyway, again, going back to the skinwalker and stuff like that, I mean, they're on the dark side, aren't they?
Yes, very much so. One of the things they also tell you is do not whistle at night. If you're on the reservation or even in the woods, anywhere, do not whistle because that draws them to you.
What do they? Well, we don't want to get into it, but you just don't want to run into one. They were pretty evil, aren't they?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very, very much so.
Okay, let's take this caller. Who do we have?
You got AC here.
Okay, AC. One little tip. Wait till the caller is off before calling. I only have one line working right now.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. What's your question for Chris?
Yeah, Chris, there's a lot of questions, but the one I wanted to correlate that UFOs from the orbs to ships to anomalies to the cryptids. Do you feel there's always that one thing? They know who you are. They have a sense of feeling that this is what I get out of it, that they pop out and they all come out differently and disappear differently. So my question would be,
Sure.
Do you feel that they are more intelligent than we are and have been? I mean, are they watching us now as we're speaking, or do they know what we're doing? Do you have that kind of feeling that they're more aware than we are, that we're just drones to them? And I'll take that off the air, that question. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, good question, Art.
And Art, yes, I do believe that they do read our minds, even on the ground, because it seems like a lot of the sightings, when anybody goes to get a camera or something, they take off. Or there's moments that individuals say that they look up and they see something and they'll say, come to me, and they'll respond. So if everything is true, I do believe that they are more intelligent than what we are. Obviously, if they're able to do what they do with their craft, it's beyond our current understanding of physics and science. I don't think that they are here to be malicious. I think they're curious about us. I think they're watching us very closely so that we do not take any of our hostilities out into space with us when we start venturing out there. They're kind of like policing what we're doing. But they are curious. They will abduct. They will do experimentation. But it's almost in the extent of we look at an animal to do an experiment on. They don't perceive us on their level, so they're going to look kind of down upon us. But they are most definitely aware of our thinking processes. And I've noticed that myself when I see something strange. It's like you almost get the feeling that they are as much aware of you as you are of them.
With all the encounters, Chris, you've had working, out in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been threatened with your job as a park law enforcement ranger when you try to tell them that we seen this or that?
Oh, absolutely. It was like I said earlier, when the suits came to get the reports and they come up to you and they say, you saw nothing. Do you understand? Well, that's kind of an open book right there, but it puts you in your place real quick. And that's one of the main reasons they threaten you, not directly, but they say, are you fit to be a park ranger? Are you fit for law enforcement? So that word fit has got a lot of emphasis to it. So rangers who say things usually keep it to themselves. Now they'll go ahead and make the reports that others have made. But if you personally see something, if you feel you're kind of a threat to the establishment, they will more than likely do something. I mean, they can't do anything to me at my age now, and a lot of Rangers are coming forward with it. They're upset with the way the government has been handling all of this, and so you really can't stop all of us.
Yeah, I mean, when you have people disappearing, going backpacking and disappear, you find their backpacks, you find, their tents, and without the people, then you can't even figure out what happened to them. That's the scary part. Right. Now, the other question I have you ever seen any military ops in an area that kind of made you puzzled? Why are they out in the woods?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There was a time I was out on patrol with another ranger, and this was up in Yellowstone. And we saw the proverbial flying saucer, basically.
How big was it? Let's first find out.
It was huge. I would say at least 2 football fields long. It was tremendous. I mean, it was just, and it came over, and the shadow literally basically covered the whole valley as it went over. And it went behind some of the mountains there. And we called it in. At first, we called it in as a downed craft because we didn't know what we were really dealing with. We know what we saw, but we weren't going to admit it right up until we had a little bit more proof. So we went back on some of the fire roads, and we got there. It took us about an hour and a half. And by the time we got there, the road was closed. And it was the military. The military was there, and they just come out of nowhere. I mean, literally, I couldn't figure out how they got there. And the only thing I could think of was they brought them in through helicopters and so on, because we had seen a couple of helicopters, but they were unmarked, and they were headed in that direction. But by the time we got there, there was other equipment. They had Jeeps, and I mean, they had the whole place boarded off. And this is still on federal property. This is under our jurisdiction. And I got myself into a little trouble because I went up and I says, what's going on back there? We've come to see and check this out. And this soldier took a stance with, his rifle in his arm and said, "You are not going anywhere." And I literally told him, I says, "I want to see your commanding officer." He says, "He's busy right now." Well, I said, "Whoever's in charge of you, I want to see him now." So this lieutenant came along, and I said, "Why are you stopping myself and my other ranger here, my partner, from going in on our land, on our jurisdiction?" And all he said was, "You do not have the clearance to go anywhere. And if you want to continue wearing that badge, back off now."
Wow.
And he even said, he told the soldier as he turned around, he says, "If they try anything, shoot them."
Was he serious about the shoot part?
Yep. I had no doubt in my mind. That's how serious they are about these things. And they do not want you to know anything.
Now, there's also been reports in the National Forest that there's secret underground military bases. Have you heard anything about that?
Oh, absolutely, especially right down here in the South. One of the biggest one is the Dulce, New Mexico base that's down there. And years ago, there was supposed to have been a situation where some military personnel and geothermal, they were scientists, basically. They were checking the environment and so forth, and they found this hole at the top of the mesa, and they went down, and apparently there was some kind of an altercation, and several soldiers were killed. And this other gentleman had been hit in the hand with some kind of a laser, and it cut his fingers right off.
Oh, wow.
The air was like gas, and they finally got a few of them up, but there was quite a few that apparently had been killed. And this gentleman used to go on tours and describe what had, I wish I could remember his name, but he would describe basically what had happened in this encounter. And that technically it was kind of a state of war taking place, and that these extraterrestrials had this base. But later to come to find out that apparently it was a cooperation between our military and the extraterrestrials. And even to this day, there are individuals that have come forward that say there are military installations, U.S. military installations, that like for the first 5 floors underground are scientists and so on from the military. But then below that is where the ETs run all of their science and all of their experiments and their living quarters and so on. And because of that, there appears to be, or said to be, this interconnecting underground speed rail system that takes you clear across the country to all these different reported bases. And it's DIA, Denver International Airport, is believed to be one of these places. It's conveniently masquerading as an airport when in fact underground it's a military base. And the reason why they believe this is they see military officers go in and uniform, they've got briefcases, and they'll go into a door, this unmarked door, and they never come out. So something's going on. And even when the development of DIA, there was all of these underground structures being built. And of course, the government comes out and says, oh, it's for luggage and so on, but I mean, immense areas underground. And DIA is so far out into the prairies from Denver. So it raises your eyebrows.
Well,
Cheyenne Mountain to the south.
I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago through Messenger, and then we actually went to voice. And I'm trying to get him on the show, but he refuses to come on. But him and his buddy went, I'm not going to say where, they're driving around, and they saw a U.S. Post Office building, a big building. And they went to it, and they noticed people were going in and not coming out. And they noticed like these great big vents around the building and out there, air vents. And they walked in and they managed to go down a flight of stairs. Then they saw this big steel, door, blast door. And they went down to another level. And then there was security people there. And they were shocked to see him in there. And they escorted him out. But, he goes, I don't know anything like the post office would have that.
Right. Well, there's a building down in Denver, right off of the interstate there, I-25. And it's just like you described. It's this big building. It doesn't have any windows. It only has these huge air vents. And it's completely surrounded by gates. And there's no markings on it. There's nothing to identify it, and nobody knows exactly what it's for. People have basically said it was a federal building, either U.S. mail or power or whatever. They come up with all the stories, but there is nothing that actually shows that. But ironically, you look at that. You look at, like I said, you've got DIA there. Then you've got this very odd, strange building. Then you've got Cheyenne Mountain south to Colorado Springs. And it just kind of goes on and on and on, right down that corridor. And so I'm a firm believer that there's more going on underground than we could possibly know.
More than we can actually comprehend. Yeah. Our time is going by so fast, Chris. If somebody is out in the woods and they encounter a Bigfoot or a dogman, what should they do? I mean, one, for protection-wise, But other than that, I mean, how would they go about reporting it, and how would they be treated by reporting it?
Well, first of all, you really should not go out into the woods unarmed. I hate to say that because that could lead to more problems, but truthfully, that's just for your own safety. If a wild animal came into your campground or whatever, a bear or a cougar or something along those lines. But if you got something else, that's the big 22 that you've got to be careful of. And it's, in my belief system, if you try to run, it's going to spark something. If you back off slowly, then you probably, facing it, of course, then you have a better chance of getting away. Nothing in the rule book says it's not going to jump out after you, but you can take every progressive means to try and protect yourself. The other thing about reporting, you have to be careful of who you report it to. Because there again, how many of these reports that have come just in the National Park Service and the Forest Service have gone into the blue file and disappeared forever? You may think that you have enlightened your story or not, but another way is just like in your case, have them call into your show and describe what they encountered. That way, thousands of people are hearing it versus it going into the blue file and never being seen again. And there again, people who listen to your show are going to be much more open-minded than, say, Joe Henry, who is going to laugh at him and say, oh, you're making this up or you're full of it or whatever. So there are avenues to take.
Well, there's a lot of pranksters with this subject too, about Bigfoot, for example. What are the odds because I see so much of this on TikTok and on Facebook and on X, people putting up pictures. They're at a campground, and here's a trail right next to the campground. I'm talking a campground picnic type one, okay? And here's a trail that people walk, and then off the trail, about 20 feet, 30 feet, there's these sticks put together like a lean-to, and they say, this is made by Bigfoot. Why would Bigfoot put a structure right by a path where hundreds of people walk during the summer by it every day?
Well, that's it. I mean, unless they had some really hardcore evidence to support it, like fur or any kind of defecated materials, anything along those lines in or near that quote-unquote shelter, then I would not believe it, especially as open as they are. I mean, you can look right off of a trail and see them. And I do believe that, like in many of the cases of the crop circles, they're forgeries, but there are some that are not. And there could be areas. Now, I believe that if Bigfoot stays around, it's going to be staying around in a cave where it's darker, it's going to be away from people, it's not going to be in the general neighborhood. A lot of people have claimed that when they've been abducted, they find themselves on top of the mountain when they kind of come to, especially children. They'll find a child who had been abducted and they're down at the base, and then 10, 15 miles away, they're up on top of a mountain. How did this child get there?
Yeah, how did they get there?
Yeah, exactly. And then when asked, they say the bear took them. The bear kept me warm.
Yeah, Bigfoot. Wasn't there a case back a few years ago, JC, where a young girl or a boy or something they found in a cave, and something, and he kind of said like this hairy bear or whatever. You remember that?
Yes, that was in the Carolinas. I think it was in 2019, and it was in the winter, and the child went missing for 3 days. And he said a hairy bear kept him alive. But here's the thing. At that time, bears would either be going into hibernation or coming out of hibernation, and therefore they're going to eat as much as they can going in and coming out.
Yeah.
So, you know, the odds of it being a bear keeping a child warm and then bringing them home for 3 days is pretty much zero.
Exactly. But that's the thing, too. In a lot of the cases of children and Bigfoots, there doesn't seem to be any negativity. They seem more compassionate towards children. And it may very well be that they understand what a child is if they themselves reproduce. So if they have children, then they must understand that these humans are children and become protective of it and to a certain degree.
Yeah, well, they're not a threat towards them.
Right.
Whereas, like my encounter, I keep thinking about it, up in the Canadian Rockies. I mean, whatever it was, it looked at me and my friend as a threat. And that's why it chased us again, I ran as fast as I could. And, I wasn't fat then. I was young or younger a lot. And my friend was only like in his early 30s, a medical doctor. And we had to run 2.5 miles through the woods to get back to the car. And when we got back to the car, it was already there. I mean, the thinking of the speed it could go. I mean,
Yeah. Well, that's it. They want to catch you, they'll catch you. Nothing we can do on our two tiny little legs is going to prevent that. But I do believe wholeheartedly they do perceive it as a threat. And that's why I think when I saw the one that I did, when it started banging, it was alerting another one somewhere there in the forest that we got trouble. I think when they do bang on things, that's their early warning system that something is coming in.
Well, there's a movie, and I can't think of the name of it, but these hunters are out in the woods, and these other people ran into these hunters, which they weren't very nice people. But all of a sudden, they started getting killed off one by one by a Bigfoot, so they thought. And at the very end of the movie, when there was only like 1 or 2 people left, the good people, that is, all of a sudden, there wasn't just 1 or 2 Bigfoot. It was like 8 or 9 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, in a group, and that makes you wonder if you're out there and you see one, it could be a bunch of them watching you.
Yeah. Well, historically speaking, there have been many reports of multiple Bigfoots, and they have attacked homes, trailers, different locations, cabins in the woods, and they stick around until just before dawn, and then they take off. But they definitely are not happy with whomever is there. So the Bigfoot are letting the people know that they want them out.
Yeah. Now, before I let you go, you had a situation in one of the parks you're at. There was a car accident. And if I remember right, you put flares out, and you and your partner were next to your truck. Do you remember what actually happened?
Oh, yeah, I'll never forget that. There's certain things that, like we were saying earlier, they're going to stick with you like it just happened yesterday. This occurred up in Yellowstone. And we had a report that there was a 2-car accident. And so we went to investigate. It was kind of at a crossroad. And we got there, and unfortunately, the individual had perished in the one car, but the other one was extremely hurt. And so the ambulance had been called. And we're standing there, and we're doing traffic control and so on. And then it kind of lightened up. And I and my partner, we walked back towards our patrol truck. And he was leaning up against the truck with his back on the passenger side window. And I'm in front of him talking to him. And as I'm talking with him, I see movement behind me in the reflection of the glass. And I kind of stopped what I was saying to him, and I was looking closely, and this thing came literally right behind my shoulder. And it was looking at me as I was looking at it in the image, the reflection. And it was the most ungodly looking thing I had ever seen in my life. And I slowly turned my head. Now, my partner, he was just, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking that way? And I'm slowly turning my head to look over my shoulder, and there's nothing there. And I quickly turned back again, and it was still there in the reflection. And I instinctively went, oh, and I jumped out of the way, and I could still see the reflection, but it started to shimmer, and then it disappeared. And to this day, I have no idea what the heck it was. But let's just say when I got back to the station, I needed a changing in my uniform.
And how do you report something like that without having your, your supervisor come up to you and say, what were you guys sneaking off with?
Oh, boy, I'll tell you. I mean, that was a hard one to explain. And I said, you want to see my uniform? You want to get a good whiff of it? Because it'll speak for itself. But I got angry with that one because they were all going, oh, come on, you're just telling a story. By God's grace, I am not telling a story. And I literally asked for 2 days off after that. I needed to catch my wits.
Well,
and it was, again, and I think one of the things, too, is that when you have an open mind about these things, where you believe, you're not closing your mind off, Gary, towards things that, they can't exist, they don't exist, it's all, story tales and so on. But if you keep your mind open to the possibility that these things may exist, they'll show themselves to you.
I don't know if I want to open my mind to have any more ever show themselves, Chris. I really don't. Hey, do you have a website or whatever you want to share? Now's the time to do it, my friend.
Okay. Our email is Anubis Paranormal Research Org at gmail.com. And our website is APRO.wix/APRO.com. For a minute.
Okay.
And that's how they can get in contact with us.
Get a link over to my producer. We'll put it up on our website. Sure. And, that way people can follow you. I can do that over the weekend. Well, Chris, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on short notice. And again, it makes me wonder, a lot of people, I grew up, with a family. My father would take me and my son and my mom. We'd go up to Mount Rainier. We'd go hiking out 10, 15 miles from, and spend a couple days. And after I had my encounter, I had my kids. And I went out and bought an RV, and my idea of camping after that situation was going into an RV park. I refuse and have never gone back into a wooded area. I'm terrified because it
changes you.
Yeah, it did. I just think if I didn't run in the situation, I might not be here. I mean, I don't think, a lot of people think they give off orbs, they would never hurt us. But again, it's just like people are bad. And I think, again, maybe if you're in an area where, there's been more reports of Bigfoot, they might be a little bit more lenient towards humans. But if you're out like where I was, out in the Canadian Rockies, out in the middle of nowhere, how often do they see a human walking around?
Exactly. They perceive you as a threat into their world.
Yeah, but they're big. They're like 8-9 feet tall and about 500 plus pounds. They could just break you like a toothpick.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we carry those bang bang things, and they may be very much aware of that. Yeah, who's to say how intelligent they are or they are not? I believe they're sentient. I believe that they do have a rudimentary understanding of who we are and what we are and where they are. I'm still of the strong belief that they're interdimensional creatures. I think that they cross in and cross out of our reality.
Well,
That's why
maybe,
nobody has found a body or found a family of them.
well, that's one other question I have. How long would a Bigfoot body or a body last out in the woods?
Well, if you take into consideration, say, an elk that has naturally expired, that can last about 2 weeks.
2
And then
weeks?
2 weeks, and then because the carcass has to break down, plus animals that are feeding on it are going to start breaking the bones and trying to scatter it. But while it's still intact, it's still going to have some of its dexterity, as well as the fluids in it are going to start to dry out. So they're going to be much harder to break apart until the enzymes get to it.
Well, how about a Bigfoot? How long would they last? They're a big creature.
That's a good question. Since we really haven't. Well, it would depend on the predator. If a predator would even attempt to eat something along that lines.
I wouldn't. You know what they smell like, don't you?
Exactly. So
Worse than
based
your
on
pants did that time, I'll tell you that.
That's true. That's why they call them skunk cakes in Florida. But it's hard to say. But a creature that size, to break down, it would probably 3 weeks, I would guess, total, before it was something unrecognizable.
That's scary.
Yeah. Strange things out there.
Yeah. That's why I RV parks or hotels is my place now at my age. Well, again, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. And again, get that link to us. I'll get it up on our website, and maybe we can get you on in a couple months and, in the future, and bring you back on and have, part 2 of this conversation.
I would love it.
Okay, my friend, you take care.
Okay, Gary.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, JC.
Yes. What's going on?
Well, we're not on next week, but who do we have the following week on?
Well, the following week, Thursday's Thanksgiving, but we will be on Friday, and we were going to have Mr. Lance Hightower on. Now, Lance, he has a thing called paranormal 9 or 411 or something, 911, and he takes reports. He's boots on the ground with some really mind-blowing, scary dog man, Bigfoot, and all kind of cryptids, stuff that's very rare you see out there. You name it, he covers it, and I'll tell you, it's some wild stuff.
Yeah, and for the people who are on chat too, please leave a comment and a thumbs up and tell your friends about us. And if you can, even support the show by $1.49 and buy me a cup of tea, which actually goes to help pay for the music. People don't realize the bumper music I play is expensive. And, all that is, I'm not a rich man anymore.
No, and make sure you hit the hyper, is it the hype button?
Oh yeah. That's very important too. After the show is aired, if you can go back the next day and on your mobile device, not your computer, but your cell phone, if you're listening to it on it, you'll see a hype button. It costs you nothing. And you can click on that hype 3 times. That gives us points. Those points do 2 things. We make a little revenue off of it. And the more hypes we get from people, it gets the algorithm of YouTube to share it out to more places. I'm hoping we hit close to 400,000 here in the next 2 months. We're going to be at 370 some thousand by, I would say, late tomorrow at this rate.
Yeah, I would think so. The schedule that we're on headed that way. Yeah, you'll see that happening.
Yeah. Well, again, everybody, I want to thank everybody who's been on. And do you want to list some of the people that's been on?
Yeah, there's Tom, December, Barb, Art. There was Billy on tonight. There was Sonia.
X was on.
Yes, X. There was a few others, and of course, there's always those that don't. They're listening, but they're on chat, but they don't write anything, so we don't know who they are. Also.
Yeah, and a lot of people just watch it and they don't go into chat, so we don't know who they were.
Yeah, I do that a lot myself, so I understand.
So do I.
Yeah, gotcha.
Well, everybody, have a good one, and we will be back at the last Friday of the month.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one with Lance Hightower.
Yeah, we'll find out more about Bigfoot, Dogman, and what is a goatman. Actually, I really don't know much about a goatman. Do you?
I know some. There's been two major places they've been sighted. One is in Maryland, the other's in Kentucky. Supposedly, it's like a Bigfoot with horns. Now, there's a lot of theories behind it. Is there a certain Bigfoot breeds that put these horns on their head, or is it an actual goat man? I mean, who knows? But weird part is there's been a lot of reports in these two areas, the state of Maryland and Kentucky.
Yeah. Again, everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. And again, we'll catch you on the other side.
Friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night. Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers talk show will fix your despair, because